Hey guys, welcome back to the Python tutorial for beginners. In this video we're going to learn about commenting, which is actually the act of placing human readable comments into your Python code, right? There are a few reasons to do this that we'll discuss later, but it's a really important concept, and a lot of people don't talk about this until further on in learning how to use a particular programming language. But I like to get out of the way early, just so we know from early on how important it is and how you should do it. But before we get started, I want to thank all you guys for all the support you've given me on these videos. I mean, I've just started and I'm already getting views and comments, so I really appreciate it. So if you like the tutorial videos and you do find them helpful, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on them, because that way, I mean, you'll be able to keep up with the tutorial every time I post a video, right? You'll be immediately notified. Okay, so I've got PyCharm fired up, and I want to make a new project. So I'm going to go ahead and go to create new project, and then I'm going to try to use the same project for a while. So we don't have to just keep creating them every time. So I'm going to go ahead and just call this project Programming Ball. All right, so let me go ahead and create this. And of course, again, it's creating the virtual environment for the project. So for the next several videos, I'm going to use the same project to work the examples in. And hopefully it'll be up here pretty soon. Okay, so the project has in fact opened. Now that we're here, I'm going to go like I always do inside the project, and I'm going to add a new Python file. I think I'll just call this one main.py. That's what most people do actually when they make a new Python project. They have a file called main.py that executes the main thread of their program. But before we really get into typing anything and actually writing comments, we should know why we want to use comments, right? So why do we want to use comments in our code? And there's generally three main reasons for that. The first reason is that comments can be used to explain your Python code, right? If you're doing something that's really complicated, you can put comments in there to explain what's going on, so that later if you or someone else comes back and has to go through the code, say to debug it, or if you want to change something or make updates to something, so that you can understand it later, right, when you're not in the exact same mindset. So you use comments to make your code easily understandable. The second reason that we want to use comments in our code is because comments can be used to make your code just more readable in general, right? I mean, if I just went on here and started typing, 10 or 15 lines of Python code just straight down the page, or even 75 lines, right? You could look through it and figure out what's going on, but eventually when you got to like line 19, you'd start forgetting where you were at and things like that. So comments they can really be used to break up code and make it more readable as well. So you can tell that certain sections of your code are doing certain things, right? And the third reason that you really want to use comments is that you can also use comments to prevent code from executing when you're testing, right? So if you have a line of code in and let's say you've got a problem with your application, or you want to test what your application, how it performs if you do something different, right? You can just comment out a line of your code and then run your application and see how it reacts without it. Or you can comment out your current line of code and add a new line and see how it acts with your new line. So those are pretty much the three main reasons that I think of why comments are very important in code. So let's just go ahead and we'll just talk about how to do comments in Python. So the first kind of comment, there are two kinds of comments, right? There are single line comments which is where comments are just on a single line, and there are multiple line comments where you can write like a paragraph over multiple lines of your code, right? And there's two different ways to put those in your code in Python. The first way is like this. So you just use a £, and then write your comment right after the £. So when you put a £, on a line in Python, anything after that £, is ignored, right? So that entire line is ignored by the compiler, even though I wrote, or the interpreter, excuse me, even though I wrote this is a comment after it, it doesn't matter, because once the interpreter sees that £, it knows to ignore everything else on that line. So for instance, I can print hello world, right? I can run this and it will totally ignore the comment that we put above it, right? See, it works properly. You can print hello world. If I did not have this £, here, and I just had this as a comment written, you can already tell through our IDE that there's a problem here, right? But if you try to run it, let's see what happens. Well, you get an error, right? Invalid syntax, right? You can't just have these words on a line here. So using your £, lets the interpreter know that that is in fact a comment, and that it should ignore everything else on that entire line after it sees that £. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be on a line by itself, right? You could put it here after you wrote your code. You could say, this is another comment, right? And which I didn't spell another, right? There we go. I'm not an English major, by the way. So now anything after this £, should be ignored. So it should still, let's get rid of that. So it should still work properly when we execute it. And it does, right? It totally ignores that. So that's two examples of using an inline comment, a single line comment, right? Remember, with a single line comment, everything after the £, is going to be ignored. So let's look at a situation where we want to maybe use it for testing, or we want to change what we're doing. Let's say we want to see what our application would look like if we put hello programming vault instead of hello world, right? So we can just come right here in front of hello world, and we can just, okay, first, before we do that, let's just run the application and see that it does in fact print out both of those things, right? Hello world, hello programming vault. And it does. So if we wanted to see what it looked like without the hello world part, we could just come right to the front of it, put a £, and that comments out that whole line. So now when we run it, we'll only get hello programming vault. See, because it ignores that whole entire line. So we can go back and take it out. Now it's uncommented, so the interpreter should see it. Yep, it does, and it prints them both. So those are pretty much all the basics of a single line comment. So now I think we're going to go ahead and talk about multiple line comments. Okay, so now I've gotten rid of the single line quotes, and we're going to go ahead and look at how to do multiple line quotes. So if I wanted to just write a few sentences maybe about what this file is used for, there are a couple ways I can do multi-line quotes. I can do them like this. This line is used for, and then I could just do that again, creating comment examples. Right, I can do that. It looks kind of funky, right, if you put a pound symbol on every line. So there's kind of a better way to do it. So let's look at a different way to do it here. You can actually use 3 double quotes. But you have to be careful, because your IDE will actually go ahead and add 3 more double quotes because it thinks you're going to put something in between there. So every time you print a double quote, your IDE will finish it with another double quote. So we actually need to go back and take out the last 3 double quotes. And then I like to go ahead and go and just hit enter, and then it automatically puts in your other 3 double quotes. So anything you write in between there will be ignored by the interpreter. It will be a comment. So I can just put, this file is used to create examples of Python comments, right? So now we should be able to compile that, and you won't have any effect from that, right? It will ignore it totally, and it does, right? It just prints out the hello world and hello programming vault. So those are the 2 different kinds of quotes that you can use in Python, right? You can use single line quotes and you can use multiple line quotes. It's very handy. For instance, if I wanted to make this code readable, I could put a comment here and say, this is where we print hello world. It's pretty obvious, but still it's a good idea to make sure you comment your code right. And we want to put some white space here because it doesn't matter, because the interpreter ignores white space. And then we can put a comment here and say, this is where we print hello world, or hello programming vault, right? And that really makes your code much more readable. The white space makes it not look as convoluted and jammed together. And again, we can run this and it'll have absolutely no effect on our output, right? It still does the same output. So those are the 2 different kinds of quotes that you can do in Python: single line quotes, multiple line quotes. And remember, we talked about the 3 reasons to do it, right? To explain your code, to make it more readable, and to be able to comment things out when you're testing. So I guess I'll go ahead and end it there. I can exit this project. And there we go. So I hope you guys have enjoyed learning this about the comments in Python. If you did and you learned something from it, feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. Anyway, I really enjoyed teaching this to you. So anyway, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Thanks a lot.